One missing line of code. That was all it took to threaten a merger worth $100 billion. In a private room at one of New York's most exclusive restaurants, the CEO of Apex Global was watching his empire crumble in real time. His team of Ivy League engineers was helpless. The stock was free-falling. But help didn't come from Silicon Valley. It came from a 24-year-old waitress holding a pitcher of water who looked at the laptop screen and saw what no one else could. She fixed a disaster in 30 seconds, but the betrayal that followed would force her to destroy them all over again. The rain battered the awning of L'Oubli, a French bistro in downtown Manhattan that charged more for a salad than most people paid for their monthly car insurance. Inside, the air smelled of truffle oil, expensive cologne, and fear. Cassidy Vance adjusted her apron, wincing slightly as the coarse fabric rubbed against the burn on her forearm she'd gotten from the espresso machine earlier that shift. She was 24, with dark circles under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite hide, and hair pulled back into a severe bun. To the patrons of L'Oubli, she wasn't a person. She was a delivery mechanism for Pinot Noir and filet mignon. She was furniture. Table 4 needs a refill. Now, Vance, the floor manager, Henri, hissed, snapping his fingers near her face. And stop limping. It looks unprofessional. Yes, Henry, Cassidy murmured, grabbing a crystal pitcher of iced water. Table 4 was the power table. It was situated in the private alcove in the back, shielded by velvet curtains. Tonight, it was occupied by the heavy hitters of Apex Global, a logistics software giant on the verge of the decade's largest merger. At the head of the table sat Arthur Sterling. He was a legend in the tech world, a man who had built Apex from a garage startup into a logistics empire that moved cargo for nations. He looked older tonight, his grey hair disheveled, his tie loosened. He wasn't eating his $60 steak. He was staring at a tablet, his face pale. To his right was Brad Halloway, the vice president of operations. Brad was everything Cassidy despised about this world, loud, wearing a suit that cost more than her childhood home, and possessing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He was already 3 scotches deep. "Relax, Artie," Brad said, his voice carrying over the low hum of the restaurant. "The migration goes live at midnight. The Asian markets open in 2 hours. By the time we wake up, the systems will have merged, the stock will triple, and we'll be buying islands." Arthur didn't look up. The beta test showed a latency spike in the Singapore hub, Brad. If that lag transfers to the main Swift code algorithm, we don't just lose speed, we lose the inventory tracking. Ships will be ghosted in the middle of the ocean. "It's a glitch," Brad waved a hand dismissively, nearly knocking over his wine glass. "My guys cleared it. Stop sweating. You're ruining the celebration." Cassidy approached the table silently. She had learned the art of invisibility during her 2 years here. She poured water into Arthur's glass, her hand steady, despite the exhaustion trembling in her legs. "More scotch," Brad barked, not looking at her. He shoved his empty glass toward the edge of the table. "And tell the chef this steak is overcooked. I asked for medium rare. This is medium. Take it back." "I'm sorry, sir," Cassidy said, her voice soft. "I'll handle that immediately." She reached for the plate, but Brad's phone buzzed aggressively against the mahogany table. Then Arthur's tablet pinged. Then the phone of the young female assistant, Sarah, lit up. The atmosphere in the alcove shifted instantly. The drunken arrogance evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp tension. Arthur swiped open his tablet. His eyes widened. "What is this? Why is the dashboard red?" I don't know," Brad stammered, fumbling for his phone. "The server load just hit 400%. That's impossible. We aren't even live yet." The pre-market trading bot, Sarah whispered, her face draining of color. It triggered early. The algorithm thinks the merger failed. It's auto-selling. Arthur, the stock just dropped 6% in 10 seconds. Stop it, Arthur roared, slamming his hand on the table, causing the silverware to jump. Shut it down. Kill the sequence. I can't. Brad was frantically typing on his phone. I'm locked out. The system thinks I'm a hostile intruder. It's the cybersecurity protocol. It's eating itself. Cassidy stood there, holding the rejected steak plate. She knew she should leave. She knew the golden rule of high-end service. When the guests fight, you vanish. But she didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the tablet screen, facing Arthur. She saw the cascading lines of code running down the terminal window. To Brad and Arthur, it was a disaster. To Cassidy, it was a language. Before she was a waitress scraping by to pay for her mother's dialysis, Cassidy Vance had been a scholarship student at MIT. She had been a prodigy in algorithmic logic before the medical bills crushed her family and forced her to drop out and take double shifts just to keep the lights on. She recognized the script. It wasn't a hack. It was a recursive loop. It's not an intrusion, Cassidy said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Arthur Sterling looked up, blinking as if he was seeing her for the first time. Brad Halloway turned slowly, his face twisting into a sneer. Excuse me? Brad spat. Did the help just speak? It's not a hack, Cassidy repeated, her heart hammering against her ribs. She tightened her grip on the plate. Look at line 402 on the terminal, the variable for the Singapore time stamp. It's undefined. The system isn't locking you out because of a hacker. It's locking you out because it's waiting for a value that doesn't exist. It's an infinite loop. Brad laughed, a harsh, barking sound. Get out of here. Go get my steak. Jesus, the arrogance. Wait, Arthur said. His voice was quiet, but it commanded the room. He looked at Cassidy, really looked at her. What did you say about line 402? The timestamp, Cassidy said, stepping closer, ignoring Henry the manager, who was now frantically signaling her from the kitchen door to get out. You merged the legacy system with the new cloud interface. The legacy system uses a 12-hour clock format. The cloud uses 24-hour ISO standards. The code is trying to reconcile Lewogodos with 24, and it's panicking. It thinks time has stopped, so it froze the assets. Arthur looked back at the screen. He scrolled up. His finger traced the lines. He froze. My God, Arthur whispered. She's right. The syntax error is right there. This is ridiculous. Brad stood up, his face red. Arthur, you aren't listening to a waitress. She probably heard the word timestamp in a movie. I'm calling the CTO. The CTO isn't picking up, Brad, Arthur shouted. And we are losing $10 million a minute. If this hits the news wires before we patch it, the merger is dead. The company is dead. Arthur turned the tablet toward Cassidy. It was a breach of every security protocol in the company. But desperation makes men do wild things. Can you fix it? Arthur asked. Arthur, Brad protested. Can you? Arthur pressed, ignoring his VP. Cassidy looked at the tablet. It was a standard Python shell wrapper. She hadn't coded in 3 years, not since the night her father died, and she had to sell her laptop to pay for the funeral. But her hands remembered. The logic was still there, burning in her brain. I need a keyboard, Cassidy said. The touch screen is too slow. Arthur Sterling didn't hesitate. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a sleek titanium laptop. He slammed it onto the table, sweeping aside the wine glasses and bread baskets. You have access, Arthur said, typing in his biometric password. Guest admin privileges. Brad, shut up. If she breaks it, we're already dead. If she fixes it, we survive. Cassidy set the steak plate down on the empty chair. She wiped her hands on her apron. She sat down in the plush velvet booth next to the billionaire CEO. The screen was a wall of red text. The error logs were scrolling so fast they were a blur. The sell orders were queuing up in the thousands. She took a breath. For a moment, the restaurant noises faded. The clinking of cutlery, the jazz music, Henry's angry whispers. It all disappeared. It was just her and the logic. Her fingers flew across the keys. Click, clack, click, clack. "What is she doing?" Sarah asked, terrified. "She's deleting the safety parameters." "She's bypassing the firewall to get to the kernel," Brad sneered. "She's going to brick the whole system. Great job, Arthur. You just let a waitress destroy a 30-year legacy." "Quiet," Arthur hissed. Cassidy ignored them. She typed a command. "Sudo kill process 901. The scrolling red text stopped. The screen went black. "She killed it!" Brad threw his hands up. "That's it. It's over. I'm calling legal. I'm documenting this so, when the shareholders sue, they know it was your decision, Arthur." Cassidy didn't look up. "I didn't kill it. I paused it." She began typing again, faster this time. "Define timestamp conversion. T. If to autotorta 24 Hans return Woarosarza, Elsa return ISO format T." She compiled the script. She injected the patch directly into the live trading bot. "Rebooting the handshake protocol," Cassidy muttered to herself. She hit enter with a decisive snap. The black screen flickered. A single cursor blinked. Then a line of green text appeared. "System handshake. Success. Singapore node. Online. Latency, 12 minutes trade. Execution resumed. On the wall-mounted TV in the bar area, the financial news ticker had been showing a steep red line plunging down. Suddenly, the line flattened. Then it ticked upward. "The bleeding stopped," Sarah gasped, staring at her phone. "The auto-sell orders are cancelled. The stock is stabilizing." Cassidy sat back, exhaling a breath she felt like she'd been holding for 3 years. She pushed the laptop back toward Arthur. "You need to update the legacy drivers in the Hong Kong server too," she said quietly. "Or it will happen again in 6 hours when their market opens." The silence at the table was total. Arthur Sterling stared at the screen, then at the waitress. He looked at her cheap uniform, her tired eyes, the burn on her arm. He looked at the code she had written. Elegant, concise, brilliant. "Who are you?" Arthur asked. "I'm just the waitress," Cassidy said, standing up. She picked up the plate with the cold steak. "I'll get the chef to refire this for you, sir. Medium rare." She turned to walk away, her legs feeling like jelly. She just wanted to go to the kitchen, hide in the walk-in freezer, and cry. The adrenaline was crashing. "Stop," Arthur commanded. Cassidy froze. "You just saved this company $100 million, Arthur said, standing up. He wasn't looking at the tablet anymore. He was looking at Brad. "Brad, give me your seat." "What?" Brad blinked, his face flushed with alcohol and embarrassment. "Get up," Arthur said, his voice low and dangerous. "You said it was a glitch. You said your team cleared it. This waitress just diagnosed and fixed a critical infrastructure failure that your VP salary apparently couldn't cover. Get up." Brad scrambled out of the booth, looking like a chastised schoolboy. Arthur gestured to the empty seat. "Sit down, Miss Vance." "Cassidy Vance," she whispered. "Sit down, Miss Vance. You're not waiting tables tonight. You're having dinner with me." "I can't," Cassidy said, glancing toward the kitchen where Henry was watching with his mouth open. "I'll get fired." "If he fires you," Arthur said, loud enough for the whole restaurant to hear, "I will buy this building and turn it into a parking lot." Cassidy slowly sat down. For the next hour, Arthur didn't talk about business. He asked her about her life. He asked about the code. He listened as she reluctantly explained about MIT, about her father's cancer, about the debts that had swallowed her future. Brad sat on a stool in the corner, fuming, typing furiously on his phone, casting hateful glares at Cassidy. By the time dessert arrived, a chocolate soufflé that Henri brought out himself, trembling, Arthur placed a business card on the table. It wasn't the standard card. It was metal, heavy and black with gold lettering. "I don't want you to work for me, Cassidy," Arthur said. Cassidy's heart sank. Of course, it was too good to be true. He gave her a free dinner, and now he would send her back to the apron. "I want you to fix us," Arthur corrected. "I'm creating a new position, head of internal logic and systems audit. You report only to me. You have authority over the engineering team." "That's insane!" Brad shouted from the corner, unable to help himself. "She's a waitress. She has no degree. The board will never approve it." "The board cares about the stock price," Arthur said coldly. "And she just saved it. The starting salary is $250,000 a year, plus stock options." Cassidy stared at the card. It was a lifeline. It was the end of the 16-hour shifts, the aching feet, the fear of eviction. "I accept," she said. "Good," Arthur smiled. "Report to Apex Tower at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." It felt like a fairy tale, but fairy tales don't happen in corporate America. As Cassidy left the restaurant that night, walking on air, she didn't see Brad Holloway standing in the shadows of the alleyway. He was on the phone, his voice a low, venomous hiss. "Yeah, I know she fixed it," Brad whispered into the phone. "But she embarrassed me, Mark. She humiliated me in front of Sterling. I don't care if she's a genius. I want her gone. Dig into her past. Find dirt. If there isn't any, manufacture it. No one humiliates me and gets away with it." Cassidy Vance had solved the code, but she had no idea she had just initiated a war. The alarm clock in Cassidy's efficiency apartment didn't go off the next morning because she had never set it. She hadn't slept. She had spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, the metallic business card clutched in her hand like a talisman. By 7:30 a.m., she was standing in front of Apex Tower, a 60-story monolith of glass and steel that pierced the Manhattan skyline. She felt painfully out of place. She was wearing her only suit, a charcoal grey ensemble she had bought at a thrift store for a funeral 2 years ago. It was slightly too loose in the shoulders, and her shoes were sensible non-slip waitress flats, not the red-bottomed heels the women walking into the lobby were wearing. She took a deep breath, clutching her worn leather satchel, and pushed through the revolving doors. The lobby was a cathedral of capitalism. Marble floors, vaulted ceilings, and a security desk that looked more like the command center of a battleship. "Name?" the security guard asked without looking up. He was a burly man with a neck as thick as a tree stump. "Cassidy Vance," she said, her voice wavering slightly before she firmed it up. "I'm starting today. Executive floor." The guard paused. He typed her name into the system. He frowned. "Vance? I don't have a clearance for a Vance. I have vendors, janitorial and catering. You with the catering crew?" "No," Cassidy said, feeling the heat rise in her cheeks. People were queuing behind her, checking their Rolexes, sighing with impatience. "I was hired last night by Arthur Sterling. Please check again." "Look, lady," the guard sighed, leaning back. "Mr. Sterling hires VPs, not whoever you are. If you're not in the system, you don't go up. Step aside." "Is there a problem?" The voice was smooth, oily, and familiar. Cassidy turned to see Brad Holloway standing there. He looked impeccable in a navy pinstripe suit, holding a latte. His smile was dazzling, but his eyes were dead cold. "Mr. Holloway," the guard straightened up. This woman claims she was hired by the CEO, but she's not in the registry." Brad chuckled, a low, condescending sound. "Ah, yes. The Cinderella story. It's all right, Frank. She's technically an employee. Although I believe HR hasn't processed her paperwork yet. The background check takes time, especially for people with spotty financial histories." Cassidy stiffened. He had already looked her up. He knew about the debts. "I can vouch for her," Brad said, swiping his badge. "Come on, Cassidy. Don't want to be late on your first day. It sets a bad precedent." Cassidy followed him through the turnstiles, her face burning. The elevator ride was silent and suffocating. They shot up 50 floors in seconds. When the doors opened, they didn't reveal the plush executive suites Cassidy had imagined. Instead, they opened onto the 40th floor. The boiler room. This was where the code was written. It was a cavernous open-plan office, bathed in the blue glow of 400 monitors. The air smelled of ozone and stale energy drinks. "Arthur is in meetings with the SEC all morning regarding the merger," Brad said, stepping out. "He asked me to get you settled." "He said I was reporting to him," Cassidy said, tightening her grip on her bag. "And you will. Once you prove you actually belong here." Brad stopped in the middle of the floor. He clapped his hands loudly. "Listen up, everyone." The room went silent. 50 heads turned. Most were men, young, wearing hoodies that cost $500, looking at Cassidy with a mix of curiosity and boredom. "This is Cassidy," Brad announced, his voice carrying a mock enthusiasm. "Arthur found her at a restaurant last night. She fixed a syntax error on a tablet, so now she's your new internal audit lead. Please make her feel welcome. Teach her how we do things in the big leagues." A ripple of laughter went through the room. It wasn't friendly. It was the sound of a pack of wolves realizing a rabbit had just been dropped in their den. Brad gestured to a desk in the far corner, right next to the humming server closet. It was small, isolated, and had a single, older monitor. "That's your station. Your login credentials are on a sticky note. Get to work, Cassidy. Show us you're not just a party trick." Brad walked away, leaving her standing there as the room erupted into whispers. Cassidy walked to the desk. She could feel their eyes on her back. She sat down, the chair squeaking loudly. "So, you're the waitress?" Cassidy looked up. A man rolled his chair over. He was wearing a T-shirt that said "Cold-Blooded" and had a vibe of aggressive intelligence. This was Trent Davis, the lead systems architect. He was the one whose code she had likely corrected the night before. "I'm Cassidy," she said evenly. "I'm Trent, Stanford, class of 22, magna cum laude," he said, leaning back with his hands behind his head. "Just so you know, fixing a timestamp error isn't engineering. It's spell check. Don't think you can come in here and touch my kernel architecture." "If your kernel architecture is as sloppy as your timestamp variables, someone needs to touch it," Cassidy shot back. The engineers nearby gasped. Trent's smile vanished. "Watch yourself, newbie," Trent snapped. "You don't have root access. You don't have friends. And Brad? He's looking for a reason to throw you out. You touch one line of code that crashes a build and you're done." Trent spun his chair around and put his headphones back on. Cassidy turned to her computer. She typed in the credentials. User, CVANTS, password, guest 123. Access level, restricted. She didn't have admin rights. She couldn't access the core code. She couldn't audit anything. Brad had given her a computer that was essentially a glorified typewriter. She sat there for a moment, the frustration welling up. They wanted her to quit. They wanted her to sit here for 8 hours, unable to do anything, until she got bored and left. Cassidy Vance smiled. They didn't know who she was. They thought she was a waitress who got lucky. They didn't know she had spent 3 years ghostwriting code for cheating computer science grad students just to pay her electric bill. She knew back doors these Stanford kids had never read about. She opened the command prompt. If they wouldn't give her a key to the front door, she was going to pick the lock on the back window. By 2:00 p.m., Cassidy had mapped the entire internal network of Apex Global, and no one had noticed. She hadn't hacked the system. That would be illegal and would trigger the Intrusion Detection System, IDS. Instead, she had used a passive network sniffer she wrote in Python, using the Notepad application on her desktop. She was simply listening to the traffic, watching the packets of data flow like water through pipes, and the water was dirty. Brad had been right about the merger migration. It was massive. But as Cassidy watched the data streams, she noticed an anomaly. Every time a transaction was processed through the European logistics hub, a tiny fragment of data was lost. It was minuscule, fractions of a cent in shipping tariffs, rounded down. But in a company moving billions of dollars of freight, those fractions added up. It was the classic salami slicing attack. Someone was skimming money. But it wasn't just theft. The code executing the skim was buried deep inside the legacy driver. The same driver Brad had insisted was clean the night before. Cassidy's fingers hovered over the keyboard. If she reported this now, Brad would bury it. He would claim she planted it. She needed proof. She needed to trace the destination of those funds. Suddenly, her email pinged. It was a message from Brad Holloway. Subject: Urgent audit required. Cassidy: Since you're the new audit lead, I need you to review this file immediately. It's the source code for the drone delivery guidance system. We're having calibration issues. Fix it by EOD or don't bother coming back tomorrow. Attached, Chimera Search Guidance V .x Cassidy narrowed her eyes. An executable file for a source code review. That was sloppy. Or it was a trap. She didn't open the file. Instead, she right-clicked and opened the raw data in a text editor. Her heart skipped a beat. Buried in the binary header of the file was a script designed to execute a remote access Trojan, RAT. If she double-clicked that icon, it wouldn't open a guidance system. It would grant Brad remote control of her computer. He would use her terminal to delete the main database, and since she was logged in, the logs would show Cassidy Vance as the saboteur. "You think I'm stupid?" Cassidy whispered. She looked up. Across the room, in the glass-walled office overlooking the pit, Brad was watching her. He was on the phone, staring directly at her desk. He was waiting for her to click it. Cassidy felt a cold sweat prickle her neck. This wasn't just hazing. This was industrial espionage disguised as incompetence. If Brad was trying to frame her this aggressively on day one, it meant he was scared. It meant he knew she would find the skimming operation. She had to turn the tables. She opened a sandbox environment, a quarantined section of memory where she could detonate the virus without it touching the network. She modified the RAT script. Instead of giving Brad control, she reversed the IP pointer. If executed, the program wouldn't broadcast her screen to him. It would broadcast his screen to her. She took a deep breath. She clicked the file. Nothing happened on her screen. But up in the glass office, Brad frowned. He tapped his mouse. He looked confused. On Cassidy's monitor, a new window popped up. It was a live feed of Brad's desktop. She saw his email open. She saw his private chats. And then she saw a folder on his desktop labeled Project Omega. She clicked it remotely. The folder opened. It wasn't code. It was a list of shell companies: Panama, Cayman Islands, Zurich, and a manifest of ghost ships, container vessels that, according to Apex's system, had been decommissioned years ago, but were actually still active, moving off-the-books cargo using Apex's fuel and logistics network. "Oh my God," Cassidy breathed. "They aren't just skimming pennies, they're smuggling." Brad wasn't just a bad boss. He was running a black market logistics empire using Arthur Sterling's company as a cover. Cassidy reached for her phone to take a picture of the screen, but suddenly a heavy hand landed on her shoulder. She jumped, spinning around. It was Trent Davis, and behind him, 2 uniformed security guards. "Step away from the computer, Vance," Trent sneered, looking triumphant. "What?" Cassidy stammered, trying to minimize the window showing Brad's desktop, but Trent grabbed her wrist. "We detected an unauthorized executable running on this terminal," Trent announced loudly, drawing the attention of the entire room. "The IDS flagged a remote access Trojan. You're trying to hack the system." "No!" Cassidy stood up. "Brad sent me the file. It's his virus." "Brad sent you a guidance file," Trent said, looking at the security guards. "I saw the email. You corrupted it. You're trying to install a back door to steal the proprietary algorithms." "That is a lie," Cassidy shouted. "Look at the screen. Look at what I've found." Trent shoved her aside and hit a key on the keyboard. The window showing Brad's desktop vanished. He brought up a prefabricated log file that made it look like Cassidy was uploading data to an external server. "Caught red-handed," Trent said. "Corporate espionage. That's a federal crime, sweetheart." Brad came walking out of his office, looking concerned and grave. He descended the stairs like a disappointed father. "What is going on here?" Brad asked, his voice booming. "She's hacking us, sir," Trent said. "We caught the upload in progress. She's stealing the merger data." Brad shook his head, looking at Cassidy with mock pity. "I knew it. I told Arthur it was a risk hiring someone off the street. Desperate people do desperate things." "You set me up!" Cassidy screamed, fighting against the guard who had grabbed her arm. "Arthur! I need to speak to Arthur." "Mr. Sterling is in a sensitive negotiation," Brad said coldly. "He doesn't have time for thieves. Escort her out, and confiscate her bag. We need to check it for hard drives." "Get off me!" Cassidy struggled, but the guards were too strong. They dragged her away from the desk. As they hauled her toward the elevator, humiliating her in front of 50 smirking engineers, Cassidy locked eyes with Brad. He winked. Just a subtle, split-second wink. "Game over," his eyes said. They threw her out on the sidewalk. Her bag was tossed after her, its contents spilling onto the concrete, her lip balm, her notebook, and the metal business card Arthur had given her. "If you come back," the guard warned, "we call the NYPD." Cassidy stood there, shaking, rain starting to fall again. She was fired, she was disgraced, and she had zero proof. She looked down at the metal card in the puddle. Arthur Sterling, CEO. She picked it up. She wiped the mud off it. Brad thought he had won. He thought he had cut her off from the system. But he had made one fatal mistake. When Cassidy had reversed the connection to Brad's computer, she hadn't just looked at the files. She had initiated a background transfer. She reached into her pocket. Her phone was hot. The transfer had finished 5 seconds before Trent touched her keyboard. She had the Project Omega files on her phone. Cassidy Vance looked up at the towering skyscraper. Her fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard rage. "You want a war, Brad?" she whispered. "Okay. Let's see how you handle a waitress who knows how to serve cold dishes." She turned and walked into the rain. She wasn't going home. She was going to the one place where she could decrypt these files without being tracked. She was going back to the internet cafe in Queens where she used to hustle code. The waitress was gone. The hacker was back. The neon sign of the Bit Bucket, a dingy internet cafe in the basement of a laundromat in Queens, flickered with a dying buzz. It was a place for gamers, insomniacs, and people who didn't want to be found. Cassidy Vance sat in the furthest booth, her hood pulled up over her head. Her phone was connected to a burner laptop she had rented for $10 an hour cash. The rain outside had turned into a storm, mirroring the chaos inside her mind. She had been fired, humiliated, and framed for corporate espionage. According to the alert that had just flashed across the local news ticker on the cafe's mounted TV, she was now a person of interest regarding a massive data breach at Apex Global. Brad wasn't just firing her, he was burying her. "Come on," Cassidy whispered, watching the progress bar on the screen. She was running a brute force decryption algorithm on the Project Omega files she had pulled from Brad's computer. The encryption was military grade, AES 256, with a rolling key. It should have been unbreakable. But Brad was arrogant. He had likely used a personal seed key, something connected to his ego. Cassidy tried combinations based on his public data. Birthday? No. Social Security? No. Then she remembered the conversation at the restaurant. Brad had bragged about the stock price. He was obsessed with the numbers. She typed in the date Apex Global went public, followed by the opening stock price. Access denied. She gritted her teeth. She thought back to the office. The folder was named Project Omega. Omega was the end. The last letter. The exit strategy, she realized. She typed in the date of the merger. Tonight's date, 12/02/2025. Access granted. The screen flooded with spreadsheets, shipping manifests, and bank routing numbers. Cassidy's eyes widened as she scrolled through the data. It was worse than she thought. Brad wasn't just smuggling cheap contraband. He was using Apex's ghost ships, vessels officially listed as scrapped, to transport rare earth minerals and guidance chips to sanctioned nations. He was bypassing international embargoes using the very logistic software Arthur Sterling had built to connect the world. And the money? It wasn't being skimmed. It was being funneled into a shell corporation that was set to buy a controlling stake in Apex post-merger. Brad wasn't just stealing from Arthur. He was buying the company out from under him, using dirty money. He's going to own everything by tomorrow morning, Cassidy breathed. Suddenly her phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a system alert. Warning. GPS ping detected. Cassidy froze. The file she had downloaded had a tracker. As soon as she decrypted it, it beaconed her location. She looked up at the cafe entrance. Through the rain-slicked glass, she saw a black SUV screech to a halt at the curb. Two men in dark raincoats stepped out. They weren't police. They moved too fast, too precisely. They were private security, Brad's cleaners. Cassidy grabbed the flash drive she had saved the data to. She ripped the battery out of her phone and dropped the device into a half-finished soda. It fizzed and died. She bolted for the back exit. "Hey, you didn't sign out!" the cafe owner shouted. Cassidy ignored him, bursting through the rear door into the alleyway. The rain hit her like a hammer. She heard the front door of the cafe crash open behind her. "Clear the back!" a voice shouted. Cassidy sprinted down the alley, splashing through puddles, her lungs burning. She knew these streets. She had grown up 3 blocks from here. She took a sharp left, vaulting over a pile of trash bags, and squeezed through a gap in a chain-link fence. A gunshot cracked through the air. A bullet sparked off the brick wall inches from her head. They were shooting to kill. This wasn't corporate espionage anymore. This was a hit. Cassidy scrambled up a fire escape, her wet shoes slipping on the rusted metal. She pulled herself onto the roof of the tenement building and lay flat, pressing her face against the cold tar. Below, the men swept the alley with flashlights. "Lost her," one growled. "She's a rat," she scuttled. "Brad isn't going to be happy," the other replied. "Track the drive. If she tries to access it again, we'll find her." Cassidy waited until the SUV peeled away. She was shivering uncontrollably, soaked to the bone. She had the evidence on a plastic drive in her pocket. She had no phone, no money, and the police were looking for her. She checked her cheap wristwatch. It was 6:45 p.m. The merger gala started at 7:12 p.m. at Apex Tower. The official signing was at midnight. If Arthur signed those papers, the company would legally merge with the shell core, and Brad's money laundering would be solidified into the bedrock of the new conglomerate. The evidence would become circumstantial. She had 5 hours to break into the most secure building in New York, get past the man who wanted her dead, and convince the CEO that his best friend was a monster. Cassidy stood up on the roof, looking at the distant lights of Manhattan. The Apex Tower stood tall, a beacon of blue light cutting through the storm. "I need a uniform," she said to herself. She climbed down the fire escape. She didn't go to her apartment. They would be watching it. Instead, she ran toward the subway. She had one contact left. One person who could get her into that building without an ID badge. Henri. The manager at L'Oubli, the grand ballroom of the Apex Tower, was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars hung from the ceiling. 1,000 of the world's wealthiest people, tech moguls, senators, foreign dignitaries, mingled while sipping vintage champagne. At the center of it all was Arthur Sterling. He looked tired. He was shaking hands, smiling for cameras, but his eyes were distant. He was worried about the glitch from yesterday. He felt something was wrong, but his advisors, led by a jubilant Brad Holloway, kept assuring him that the systems were green. "Drink, Arthur." Brad clapped him on the shoulder, holding a glass of scotch. "Tonight is the finish line. Tomorrow, we are the kings of the world." "I haven't seen Ms. Vance today," Arthur said, frowning. "I called HR to check on her onboarding, but they said there was a security incident." Brad's expression didn't flicker. "Ah, yes. Tragic, really. It turns out she was a plant. Caught her trying to upload ransomware to the server farm. Trent caught her just in time." Arthur stopped. "Cassidy, the waitress? That's impossible." She fixed the code. "It was a honey trap, Arthur." Brad lowered his voice, looking grave. "She created the problem so she could fix it and get access. Classic social engineering. We found her transfers. She was selling data to our competitors in China. We had to let her go. Police are handling it." Arthur looked down at his glass. He felt a pang of disappointment. He had wanted to believe in the brilliant girl with the tired eyes. "I see. That's unfortunate." "Forget her." Brad smiled. "Look at the screen. The countdown. 4 hours to midnight." Meanwhile, in the loading dock 40 floors below, a catering van from L'Oubli was passing through the security checkpoint. "Name?" the guard asked. "Henri Dubios, catering manager," Henri said, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He was sweating. "And the passenger?" The guard shined his flashlight on the woman in the passenger seat. She was wearing a crisp white tuxedo shirt, a black bow tie, and her hair was slicked back tight. She held a clipboard and looked bored. "Marie, new sous chef," Henri said. "She's replacing the guy who got sick." The guard shined the light in Cassidy's face. She didn't flinch. She stared right back, channeling every ounce of exhaustion and annoyance she had felt during her 5 years in service. To the guard, she wasn't a fugitive hacker. She was just another overworked kitchen staff member. "Go ahead," the guard waved them through. As the van rolled into the underground bay, Cassidy exhaled. "You are crazy, Sherry," Henry whispered, parking the van. "If they catch you, I lose my restaurant." "If we don't do this, Henry," Cassidy unbuckled her seatbelt, "there won't be a restaurant. Brad Holloway is going to crash the economy to hide his crimes." "Thank you." "Be careful," Henri said, handing her a silver tray. "And fix your tie." You look like a rebellious waiter." Cassidy grabbed the tray. She slipped the flash drive into her pocket. She wasn't going up as a guest. She was going up as part of the scenery. She took the service elevator to the 60th floor. The doors opened into the bustling catering kitchen behind the ballroom. It was chaotic. Chefs shouting, waiters running back and forth. Cassidy grabbed a pitcher of water and a napkin. She blended in instantly. She stepped out onto the ballroom floor. The noise hit her first, the roar of conversation, the string quartet. She kept her head down, moving with the rhythmic, invisible grace of a server. She weaved through the crowd, offering water, collecting empty glasses. Her eyes scanned the room. She saw Arthur near the stage. He was surrounded by a wall of security. Brad was hovering near him like a vulture. She couldn't just walk up to him. Brad would see her. The security would tackle her before she got a word out. She needed to get the data onto the big screen. Behind the stage was the AV booth. That was her target. Cassidy made her way toward the back of the room. She was 10 feet from the heavy velvet curtains masking the backstage area when a hand grabbed her arm. "Champagne!" a voice slurred. Cassidy froze. She turned to see a wealthy donor, red-faced, holding out an empty glass. "I'm afraid I only have water, sir," Cassidy said, keeping her head down. "I said champagne," the man snapped, grabbing her shoulder. "Hey!" A voice cut through the noise. It wasn't the donor. It was Trent Davis. The lead engineer was standing nearby, looking bored. He had heard the commotion. He looked at the waitress. He frowned. He tilted his head. Cassidy pulled away from the donor. She locked eyes with Trent. Trent's eyes went wide. "You!" Cassidy dropped the pitcher. It shattered on the marble floor, the crash silencing the nearby conversations. "Security!" Trent screamed, pointing at her. "She's here! The hacker is here!" Panic rippled through the crowd. Brad Holloway's head snapped toward the noise. He saw Cassidy. His face turned a color of pure, violent rage. "Get her!" Brad roared at his private security team. "Take her down!" Cassidy didn't run. She didn't have anywhere to run. She was 40 feet from the AV booth, and 4 security guards were sprinting toward her, tasers drawn. She looked around wildly. She saw a microphone stand near the edge of the stage, currently unused. She grabbed a heavy silver serving platter from a passing waiter, apologized briefly, and hurled it like a frisbee at the first guard. It struck him in the chest, knocking him winded. She vaulted over a table, scattering expensive hors d'oeuvres. "Stop her! Shoot her if you have to!" Brad was screaming, losing all composure. The crowd screamed as a guard drew a sidearm. "Don't shoot!" Arthur shouted, stepping forward. "Are you insane? Put the gun down!" Cassidy reached the stage stairs. She scrambled up them. She was center stage now. The giant LED screen behind her was displaying the countdown, 03:59. Until merger. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the flash drive. The podium. It was a smart podium, connected to the presentation system. She jammed the drive into the USB port on the side of the lectern. "Cut the power!" Brad shrieked, sprinting toward the stage himself. "Cut the feed!" Cassidy typed furiously on the podium's touch screen. Her fingers were shaking, but the muscle memory held. Override presentation. Source, external drive. E. 2 guards tackled her from behind. Cassidy hit the ground hard, her chin slamming into the stage. A heavy knee pressed into her back. Her arm was twisted up behind her. "Get it out! Pull the drive!" Brad yelled, scrambling up the stairs. Trent Davis reached the podium and yanked the flash drive out. "Got it!" Trent yelled. "The upload was incomplete." Cassidy lay pinned on the stage, breathless, pain radiating through her shoulder. She looked up. The giant screen flickered. It went black. Brad stood over her, straightening his tie, panting. He looked at the horrified crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please," Brad said, putting on his charming mask, though his voice trembled. "I apologize. A disgruntled ex-employee, mentally unstable. We are handling it." He looked down at Cassidy, his eyes promising murder. "Get her out of here. Throw her down the elevator shaft for all I care." The guards hauled Cassidy up. She was crying. She had failed. She had gotten the drive-in, but the file was too big. It hadn't finished copying. Arthur Sterling walked up the steps. He looked at Cassidy. There was hurt in his eyes. "Why, Cassidy?" Arthur asked softly. "I gave you a chance." "He's stealing it, Arthur," Cassidy choked out, blood on her lip. "Project Omega. Check the ghost ships. He's smuggling weapons. He's laundering money to buy you out." "Enough lies." Brad stepped between them. "She's delusional, Arthur. Take her away." The guards dragged her toward the backstage curtain. Suddenly, a loud screech of audio feedback tore through the ballroom. Everyone covered their ears. The giant black screen behind them didn't stay black. It flickered green. And then a video feed appeared. It wasn't the files Cassidy had tried to upload. It was something else. It was a live stream. On the screen, a young man with messy hair and thick glasses was sitting in a dark room, the internet cafe. It was the gamer kid Cassidy had sat next to earlier. Is this thing on?" the kid on the giant screen said. "Okay, cool. So this lady left her laptop logged in at my cafe, and she had a script running called, 'If I get caught, broadcast everything.' I thought it looked important. So here you go." Cassidy stopped struggling. She hadn't finished the upload at the podium, but she had set a dead man's switch at the cafe. The screen shifted. It displayed the documents, the bank transfers, the emails from Brad to the buyers in sanctioned countries. And then a video file played, security footage from Brad's own office, showing him laughing while discussing how he would gut the company once Arthur signed the papers. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Arthur Sterling turned slowly toward Brad. Brad Halloway stood frozen, his face draining of blood until he looked like a corpse. He looked at the screen, then at the crowd, then at Arthur. "Arthur," Brad stammered, holding up his hands. "It's a deepfake. It's AI. You know what these hackers can do." Arthur looked at the screen, where the video showed Brad typing his password, the same password Arthur knew he used for everything. Arthur walked over to Cassidy. He looked at the guards holding her. "Let her go," Arthur said. His voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of a guillotine. The guards released her immediately, stepping back as if she were radioactive. Arthur offered Cassidy his hand. She took it, trembling. He helped her stand. Then Arthur turned to Brad. "You said the system was glitching because of a time stamp," Arthur said. "But the only error in this company was you." Sirens began to wail in the distance, getting closer to the tower. "Arthur, listen." Brad backed away, bumping into the podium. "We can fix this. We can spin this." "There is no we," Arthur said. He turned to the crowd, to the stunned shareholders and the press. "The merger is cancelled. I am initiating an immediate internal liquidation of the executive board, and I am pressing full criminal charges against Mr. Halloway for embezzlement, fraud, and high treason." Brad turned to run, but he stopped. Blocking his path at the edge of the stage was Trent Davis. The arrogant engineer looked at the screen, saw his own name implicated in the emails as a useful idiot, and realized his career was over unless he flipped. Trent shoved Brad backward. "You're not going anywhere, boss." The ballroom doors burst open. The NYPD, accompanied by the FBI, swarmed into the room. Cassidy stood center stage, her waitress uniform torn, her lip bleeding, watching as they handcuffed Brad Halloway and dragged him away, screaming threats. Arthur turned to her. He took off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "I'm sorry," Arthur said. "I should have listened to the code, not the suit." Cassidy pulled the jacket tight. She looked at the crowd, then at the screen where her code was still scrolling, exposing every secret Apex had ever hidden. "The code never lies, Arthur," she said softly. "Only people do." 3 weeks had passed since the night the police cars surrounded Apex Tower, painting the rain-slicked streets in chaotic bursts of red and blue. The scandal had dominated the news cycle for days, but as the cameras turned away, the real work began. Cassidy Vance walked into the lobby of Apex Global. This time, the security guard, Frank, didn't block her path or ask for ID. He stood up, straightened his uniform, and buzzed the gate open before she even reached it. "Good morning, Miss Vance," Frank said, a respectful nod replacing his previous dismissal. "Morning, Frank." Cassidy smiled, swiping a new badge. It didn't say Audit Intern. It read Chief Technology Officer. She took the elevator to the 60th floor. The atmosphere in the building had shifted. The fear was gone. The toxic pressure Brad Halloway had cultivated, the culture of silence and sabotage, had been swept away along with his office furniture. Arthur Sterling was waiting for her in the boardroom. He looked like a different man. The grey pallor of stress was gone, replaced by the energy of the visionary who had built this empire. "Cassidy," Arthur said, sliding a thick folder across the mahogany table. "The audit is complete. Brad's shell companies have been dissolved. The assets he siphoned off, nearly $40 million, have been recovered." "And Brad?" Cassidy asked, taking her seat at the right hand of the CEO. "He denied bail," Arthur said, his voice hardening. "The feds have him on RICO charges. He's looking at 20 years minimum. He won't be bothering us again." Cassidy nodded, feeling a heavy knot loosen in her chest. "There is one more thing," Arthur said, gesturing to the door. "I asked you what you needed to build the best team in the world. You told me you wanted loyalty and raw talent, not just Ivy League sharks." The door opened. 2 men walked in. One was Henri, the manager of L'Oubli, looking terrified in a cheap suit. The other was Leo, the gamer kid from the internet cafe, wearing a hoodie and looking around the boardroom like he had just landed on Mars. Arthur pointed to Henri. "Henri risked everything to get you into that gala. He's your new VP of Operations." Henri teared up, clutching his hat. "Mademoiselle Vance, thank you." Arthur pointed to Leo. "And Leo managed to bypass our firewall with a 10-year-old laptop. He's your new head of cybersecurity, on the condition he finishes his GED. "I can hack it," Leo grinned, giving a thumbs up. Cassidy looked at them, the misfits, the invisible people. The people Brad Halloway had treated like furniture. They were now the guardians of the company. "It's perfect," Cassidy whispered. "And for you." Arthur slid a smaller envelope across the table. Cassidy opened it. Her breath hitched. It was a deed. It was the deed to her childhood home, the house her family had lost to the bank after her father's medical bills piled up. Arthur had bought it back, mortgage paid in full. "You fixed the code, Cassidy," Arthur said softly. "But you also fixed the moral compass of this company. Go home. Tell your mum the debts are gone." Cassidy fought back tears, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. She could see the restaurant L'Oubli far below, a tiny speck. She remembered the heat of the kitchen and the ache in her feet. She wasn't that girl anymore, but she would never forget her. She turned back to her team. "Thank you, Arthur," Cassidy said, her voice strong. "But we don't have time to celebrate. I checked the Asian market servers this morning. The latency is back up to 14 milliseconds. We have work to do." Arthur Sterling smiled, opening his laptop. "Then lead the way, Ms. Vance." Cassidy sat down and began to type. She wasn't writing code to survive anymore. She was writing the future. Cassidy Vance's journey proves that brilliance often hides in the places society chooses to ignore. In a world obsessed with status and suits, it was a waitress with a stain on her apron who held the key to saving an empire. Villains like Brad Holloway believed power came from crushing others, but Cassidy showed that true power comes from competence, integrity, and the courage to speak up. She didn't just fix a line of code. She debugged a broken system where greed had overwritten humanity. It is a reminder to never underestimate the person refilling your water glass. They might just be the smartest person in the room. If you enjoyed this story of justice and redemption, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and subscribe for more dramatic stories about underdogs taking over the world. Comment Team Cassidy below if you think she deserved that promotion. Thanks for watching.